Lobby's open. Attendees are in, ready to start.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third DH Toolbox session. I'm Jada Watson, Coordinator of Digital Humanities here at the University of Ottawa, and I'm really excited to be hosting this series this semester. Before we begin today, I'd like to start our session with an Indigenous land affirmation. Nous rendons hommage au peuple algonquin, gardien traditionnel de cette terre. Nous reconnaissons le lien sacré de longue date, l'unissant à ce territoire qui demeure non cédé. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old. We honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. So we'd actually like to start collecting geographic data for our participants this term. If you're willing, please tell us where you're joining us from by adding the name of your city and country to the chat. Let us know the ancestral name of your location. And you can put this in the chat function or in the Q&A panel. Today's session is being delivered by my partner in Digital Humanities Crime here at the University of Ottawa, Dr. Constance Crompton. Dr. Crompton is a Canada Research Chair in Digital Humanities whose research aims to change the situation by giving web users access to the superpowers of the humanities, a better ability to understand the past in order to improve the future. Her work centers on the creation of peer-reviewed humanities-backed linked data to bring history and nuance to the web. She's director of U Ottawa's Labo des données en sciences humaines, the Humanities Data Lab. So a note about the presentation, excuse me. The workshop will be delivered in English, but the slides are bilingual, and of course, questions can be posed in the chat or in the Q&A in French or in English, and will be answered in the language asked. So without further ado, we'll head into the workshop. The description today was tidy, scrub, polish, concatenate. Our hands-on workshop today will walk us through OpenRefine's tools for cleaning tabular data and explore the various output formats for visualization, publication, and statistical analysis. We'll be working with OpenRefine, so you can download that now if you'd like at openrefine.org. And I'm going to be putting some links into the chat momentarily so that you can access the materials we're using today. And I welcome Dr. Crompton.
Great. Thank you for such a warm welcome. It is lovely to see so many folks here, many of whom, will be regulars for this series when we have it on campus. But I don't know, there's like an upside to this grim year. It's that there's so many of us who can also get together who aren't always all in the same geographic location. So I'm delighted to see both old names and old friends and new names too. Welcome, everyone. So yes, Jada will be posting lots of links in the chat. The first one is to download OpenRefine. So if you don't have a copy, you're welcome to download it on your computer. That this is a sort of hands-on workshop. So you're welcome to try out OpenRefine while you're watching the slides and while I'm sort of speaking. You're also welcome to just like watch this. Jada va ajouter un lien au nos sites web avec la vidéo et les diapos. So si vous voulez regarder maintenant et essayer après, c'est parfait. Non, elle a dit oui, c'est une présentation en anglais, mais je suis également heureux de prendre les questions en les deux langues, certainement. Et aussi pour consulter après, si vous essayez des exercices en 2 semaines et dire like, oh, qu'est-ce qui arrive? On peut parler ensemble. Mon courriel est dans les diapos aussi. I would say, yes, please do download the slides, especially to, I always find these like presentations like, if someone like moves ahead too quickly, or I want to go forward or go back, it's always nice to have the slides. And just in case things are really like tiny on your screen, feel free to download these slides to have them on hand. So without any further ado, let's dive right in. So welcome, cleaning your data using OpenRefine. Here's what I'm keen to talk about today. I've got that one slide just on how to install if you would like to try out OpenRefine while you're working, while you're watching this presentation, as well as some OpenRefine basics. This is a wonderful tool for cleaning tabular data. I'm also going to talk on how you can talk about how you can use OpenRefine to pull in more data from the web, and I've got concluded with some more advanced tutorials that are available online. So you'll certainly have more to read later on if you'd like to continue your OpenRefine journey. So are there any questions about this lineup before we dive in?
I'm not seeing any just yet.
No, right. Well, then we'll get started. So OpenRefine is an application for cleaning your data, and it requires that you have a browser. It is a standalone application, so you'll be downloading software onto your machine, but it opens inside the browser, either Firefox or Chrome. It doesn't work with Internet Explorer, I'm afraid. The community that supports it has developed a number of tutorials, and these slides end with other tutorials that you can consult if you're looking to do something in particular. That it was originally software developed by Google and was called Google Refine for years. They sort of spun it out and off, and now it is supported by a community of developers. I often have this feeling of like, when it comes to open source software, we get what we pay for, which is to say, if we're not paying for it, then we can't have high expectations. I must say, OpenRefine lives up to high expectations, and it really is the wonderful work of this like ongoing community that keeps it up to date, but also adds new features at every turn. So that the longer you work with OpenRefine, the more like new features that are a good deal of fun you might find coming down the pike. I have included instructions here for how to shut down and open OpenRefine in that, because it's it should just open the browser when you double click on it, but it can be sort of confusing about like how to turn this thing off, that it's just sort of there in your browser. So let me take like a quick moment for folks who are sort of doing that downloading And if anyone is jammed up, let's sort of answer questions there. Well, then let us jump right in. So today we're going to be working with a few prefabricated spreadsheets that I put together for this tutorial. However, they're really meant to sort of mimic the kind of challenges that we often face with our own spreadsheets. The first one that we're working with comes from a list of all of the performances of the New York Philharmonic from 1842 until 2015. And so it's a giant sort of spreadsheet. And it's the kind of thing that we might naturally have as part of one of our research projects and have amassed like carefully over years of, looking at archival records or, conducting interviews, that kind of thing. And the sort of common problem that I'm trying to reproduce with this spreadsheet is when you get that like data format entry drift. If you'll download if you download the content from this link here, you'll end up with a spreadsheet that comes from that data set. I didn't include all 21,000 rows that is available there, but instead just have the first 350 performances. And in there are some errors, the kind of thing that happens to all of us. You're filling out a spreadsheet and you come back to a project after 6 months and can't quite remember, was I saying NY for New York, or like spelling out New York longhand? Then if you want to use this spreadsheet in order to like drive a visualization, for example, it might be, then the data is inconsistent. This can also happen when you're collaborating on work with both students and other colleagues, that one person has been working with this one set of files for a while, then someone else takes them over and starts entering things in a slightly different way. Really, OpenRefine is there to help you clean up data that has this kind of drift in it in a way that doesn't mean having to read through 21,000 lines of a spreadsheet. So let us dive right in. Does anybody not have the spreadsheet who would like it? Sounds good. Okay, great. Then let's pop right in. Oh, I do see a question. Gotcha. Yes, do you mind putting that first set of links in the chat? There are 2 spreadsheets to download, so we're going to be doing 2 different exercises. I will leave that to Jada. Great. The open up.
Sorry, Connie, hold on a second. I lost my screen and I didn't know how to unmute myself. I've just loaded the slides, OpenRefine, and the data set, and I'll keep adding them every couple of minutes until everyone's feeling settled.
That's great. That's great. Because yes, we may have some folks who are joining late, and you just want to make sure that they have access to that stuff too. Fabulous. In which case, when you open up OpenRefine, you should get a screen that looks like this. On the left-hand side, there's a column that lets you create a new project from scratch. That's what we're going to be doing today. The computer will also save copies of your projects, so you can reopen them again. In case you are curious about where they get saved, screen upon screen upon screen here. Let's see. The OpenRefine documentation does sort of say where those things are. So your files that you're working on and that you're cleaning will be stored here if you're on a Windows machine, or in application support if you're on a Mac. So you can open existing projects, things you've worked on. You can also share projects with one another. It's possible, we'll talk about this at the end, to export a project. You can send it to someone else if somebody else is doing this sort of data cleaning with you together. And it does have different language settings, which is some useful support. So to start today, we're going to work with that file from the New York Philharmonic. I'm going to click on this brown browse button and head to Concerts Cleaning Nettoyage and open it up. And then next. And it gives me a little preview of the spreadsheet. This can be helpful. We've all had those spreadsheets that like have sort of opaque names even to us. And so being able to have a look is useful. You'll see it's got date information, the location information. All of the early performances of the New York Philharmonic are in New York. The time, the venue, the event type and season. They have particular IDs, the orchestra that was playing, and there's a hashed ID as well. Helpfully, we give a lot of options as we're importing this data. We don't always have to work with tabular data, so we're not really covering, we'll look at JSON a little bit in this project, but we aren't really looking at some of these other options, XML files or MARC record files, but just know that this isn't just for cleaning data that is in spreadsheets. You can tell a little bit about what's in your file. You can get it to ignore the first line, or to, say if you have like a column or sorry, a row or two of headers, you can let it know what you have header wise here to recognize that I do have headers and that date, location, time, venue, event type are not part of the data itself. And then we can give the project a name, which I will say is and create project. And then this name will show up in my project that I can open up again and I can continue to work on. Great. So here it's showing me 10 rows at a time, but it lets me know that there are 2,100 rows, although actually only 350 of them have content in them. And I can see, yes, all of my text is sort of nicely lined up here. And actually everything looks fine to me. But rather than reading through every single line to see, did we always spell Apollo correctly? Is the capitalization always correct? Do I have the dates always in the format that I was hoping for? I can use some of the existing tools in OpenRefine in order to have a look and to see what's going on in this spreadsheet. So for example, if you look at the spreadsheet itself, just like over right up in whatever your favorite spreadsheet software is, you'll see there are a lot of different venues. And I want to make sure that I've always done things like always capitalized the A in Apollo and the R in rooms, or that I've always named the orchestra correctly. To have a look at that, maybe I should, I don't know if I should like download the slides separately. Everything I'm saying is in the slides. So really what I'm sort of doing here is like walking through the slides, even if I'm not like referring to them directly. So feel free to head back and forth through the slides if you'd like to see them. So I'm now, even though I'll just be doing it in OpenRefine, I'm now on slide 5, the cluster and edit section. We'll head into. So I want to double check, have I actually entered the orchestra names correctly all the way throughout in a consistent way, so that I can do things like count the number of times a particular orchestra played, but get the computer to actually be counting the same name over and over and over again. So I'm going to head into edit cells, cluster and edit. And what this is going to do is look for near matches, things that look similar, and ask me, should these be the same or should we keep these different? And this would be, it's certainly useful if we had 21,000 rows, so I wouldn't have to look at it by hand. And indeed, here, OpenRefine is showing me that I've got NY Symphony in 8 rows and lowercase NY Symphony in 4 rows. I've also got New York Symph with a period and New York Symph without a period. Is this really what I want? Now, if these look fine to me, if it was saying like, these are near matches, should you change them so that they are all the same? And I thought like, oh, no, these are as they should be, then I could just close this and I'd be fine. However, in looking at these, I realized that actually I would like all of these to read New York Symphony. So I can put in the value that I would like for all of these to read. And oh, pardon me, merge. Yeah, so do I want to collapse these all together? Yes, I do. And I'll get it to look again. And it says there are no problems of this sort. And if I were now to, go to 50 rows and scroll all the way through, I'd see that the New York Symphony is no longer n, lowercase dot y, symphony, but rather is New York Symphony all the way through. There are some hiccups too in the venues. So we can do the same exercise. Click on the arrow at the top of the column. We'll choose edit cells and cluster and edit. And here I can see, we got into some hiccups along the way. Sometimes Metropolitan Opera House has the brackets around it, sometimes not. Niblo's Garden, 2 times we left out the apostrophe while entering the data. Academy of Music, clearly I really meant to have it be uppercase the whole time, but occasionally I entered it lowercase. Let's fix that up. And it OpenRefine also offers us this look of where these changes are in the document. So if I did want to open my giant spreadsheet and have a look and sort of say where it's finding these things, I could quite easily sort of say, it's very close to the end that I'm getting the Metropolitan Opera House 39th Street without the brackets. But I could actually go and maybe have a look at the spreadsheet itself to see if I should be making these changes. In this case, I like the suggestions it's making, right? It's choosing the most dominant version and saying, do you want Academy of Music to be uppercase? Yes, I do. So I will say merge these together so that we end up with 123 rows of Academy of Music all uppercase, for example. And I will merge selected in new cluster. This one too. Make sure that it's going to do the right thing. Yes, please. Great. And now this is set. So already we've done some handy data cleaning. This is the kind of thing that can save you a lot of time, headache, and heartbreak. You may also have a spreadsheet where you think, I'd like to be able to split some of these columns. There's some content in here that say, I was in the archives and compiling this spreadsheet, but now I'd like to use it to drive some, to drive a visualization. The artificial case that I kind of imagined here was that we might be using the spreadsheet for a timeline of some sort, and I'm going to have a pop-up or a map and a timeline. Where was it that the New York Philharmonic played across the country in this year stretch? That I may want to be able to include some of that date data in the lists that are going to be in my timeline, but I don't need to give people the international day. T in it. I really just want to give people the year. So what I'm going to do is get OpenRefine to read through the date column rather, and split off the year and make a new column that just has the year in it, because that's the thing that my readers need to read. So here too, I will be heading to edit column and then split into several columns. Oh, no, wait a second. I'm actually going to check my own notes. Am I adding column based on this column, or yes, split into several columns. Shouldn't second guess myself here. All right, so go into edit column, split into several columns, and OpenRefine here gives me a number of options. It's saying, did you want to split on a separator? Is there something in this column that shows up again and again that you would like to use as the split point? For example, you can see in the location column, I have Manhattan, New York. If I wanted to split that into 2 columns, that was the location and the state, say I was making a state-by-state heat map and I just did the state address, then I could use the comma as my separator and ask it to make 2 columns, one with the city and one with the state. In this case, I'm actually going to go with by field lengths, which is to say I know that the first 4 digits of what's in the date column is the thing that I want to split into a new column. So I'm going to say, just grab me the first 4 characters, please. And I'm going to unclick the remove this column. So I still want to keep the date column. That's useful data for me, even if I'm not going to use it in my visualization where people get to read the year. But I'm going to get it to add a new column. And I'll hit OK. And here you can see it's given me date and just pulled this data out. The green is telling me that this is one that's been generated from our existing data. And it's told me how many it's done it for. Now I can rename this column. Oh. It's in my slides as a thing to do. Et après, renommer la colonne, mais, but how? Well, you can dress me up, but you can't take me anywhere. Ah, collapse this column, reconcile, nope. Ah, it has escaped me. We will stick with date 1 for this column. So here, these are some of the useful basics that are available in OpenRefine. I would love to pause now for questions, especially if there's anyone who's like working on this. We can do some live troubleshooting if you're working on this like right now and you're feeling jammed up or you'd like to head back slightly. It's a friendly group, and I like to.
I don't think there's any questions.
Reproduce as best as possible. No.
We don't have any questions, Connie, but I'm seeing just a lot of edit column and rename column.
Right. Oh, very nice, very nice. Well, I will see.
Help best in the chat.
It is a helpful community. Excellent. Well, edit column and so there we are. This would be our year. That's great. And you may be working on these things and think, oh, it would be really possible to like completely alter a spreadsheet. What happens if you make a mistake? I did want to point out the OpenRefine undo redo function, which lets us move back in time just by clicking on any of our previous steps. This can be helpful too, in that it can give you a snapshot of what it is you've done in the project, in case you open up a new project and you're starting something else and you think, what was it that I did again to, in order to separate out the date in that other project? You can always go back and have a look at the undo and redo steps, and you can undo any of the steps that you want to take out. So I could undo that renaming of year by clicking on 4 and taking myself back 1 step, or I can go forward in time again. So the undo redo is very handy.
Might I jump in for a second?
Please do.
We do have a question, and it says, when I try to choose edit column for the date column, I think I'm having a JavaScript issue. Is that what the little picture with a line through it means?
Oh. Like a little, is it a little like it's like not opening it's not opening the drop-down menu for you?
Possibly. Janelle, if you want to add more details in the chat, we can sleuth this out for you.
Definitely.
And another one, how do you compare similar but not that similar values? Example, something like New York Symphony versus New York Philharmonic, which could refer to the same thing.
With that one, you would have to head in and you can do more sophisticated searches in here. I haven't prepped up what those might look like, but there are tutorials that have more sophisticated ways of searching, that let you write your own comparators, for example. So that you could do something a little bit more sophisticated. I see in here that actually I don't like. This one has musicians from the New York Philharmonic, and maybe I just want that to also be the New York Philharmonic. It is possible to filter and to add more sophisticated comparators, which you will find on the last slide. The programming historian, both in French and English, has how to do that.
Okay, and follow up from Janelle is where the arrow should be is a funny picture thing, but then the sub menu does not open and I can't choose anything.
Oh, as the Tin Man says in the Wizard of Oz, like, now I know I have a heart because it's breaking. Yes, that is a sign that there's something wrong with like the icon itself. If you are opening it in Chrome and you have Firefox, it might be worth trying to open this in Firefox by right-clicking on the application and saying like where it should open. Otherwise, it might be worth like re-downloading it, starting again. But how frustrating when like the great hope was like to try this all out live. But yes, so it's this little arrow that is not showing up for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be one of those like re-download and start again.
Thank you.
Those are some of the basics, the things that can be like really, they can be really helpful when you're working with just slightly messy data. However, one of the things I think like came up at the last session that that Yu Young was running was the question of like APIs and pulling in data from elsewhere on the web. And so I do want to take some time to talk about that too. I realized as I was putting this together too, like one of the things that would be a great workshop topic for not just the data series, but like any of the DH Toolbox series would be a straight up API workshop. I'm not going to do a full API workshop, but if it is something that you would like write in. We'll have one. We can all get together and cut things together and have a good time. That said, OpenRefine does work with application programming interfaces. These are services that we can call on from the web that will send us back content in the JSON format. They underpin a lot of the web applications that we all use on a daily basis. So they really can, that they are ways of querying an existing data set where the developers have developed an API that lets us ask for information back and will send it to us in a structured form, which can be very useful rather than like use OpenRefine so that you never have to cut and paste anything from an API back service on the web ever again. We're going to look at two ways of working with OpenRefine and APIs. One that is very like user-friendly, uses this like graphic user interface, and another one that would like requires like understanding APIs a bit. So if you have some experience with them, hopefully this will be like a good friend for you. But also it was this that made me think like, oh, we should do just like a full API workshop so that that you can really like I don't know, use like OpenRefine on overdrive and not have to enter dates and imaged links and blah by hand into your spreadsheets ever again. Any questions before we dive in?
No, just a lot of love for the API workshop. So, so everyone knows we'll do it in the winter term, I promise.
The votes are in. That's great. That's great to do these like Insta polls of like, what is it the folks want? So for the first API that we're going to be working with is Wikidata's. And there's a link here in the slide. Feel free to open it up. I just want to give people a little tour of Wikidata itself. Wikidata is a sister project of Wikipedia. So it's run by the Wikimedia Foundation. And there are, of course, a number of Wikimedia projects. People may have used Wikimedia Commons before or Wikibooks. Wikidata is the newest one. It dates from 2012. And it was originally populated by that structured information that you get in those little square info boxes in English Wikipedia. It's now its own sort of standalone Wikimedia project, and folks can add data to it as they go. So it has structured data about entities, that is, people, places, things, objects, concepts from the real world. And like all Wikimedia projects, we as users can sign on as editors and can add data to it. And it now is used to populate the info boxes, both in English Wikipedia, but also in Wikipedias in other languages. So, if you don't speak Urdu, but you would really like to help out Urdu language Wikipedia, you can contribute knowledge from your domain, whether you're a specialist in the history of modern dance or 16th century miscellanies. You could add what you know about your domain to Wikidata, and it can help populate Wikipedias across the world. And Wikidata also has an API, which is to say it lets computers ask for data from Wikidata, and it lets you retrieve that data to manipulate and to use on your own. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So not only does this feed the Wikipedia universe, but it also can be there as a data source for us. It's worth exploring Wikidata a little bit. As with all data sources in the web, I know Yu Young, the last data workshop, had said and how much do people trust data from the web and sort of various sources? And Wikidata is of a fairly high but variable quality depending on the domain that it's covering. You might find it's very thin in some areas. If you're it might not be great on 16th century paleography in Icelandic countries, but if you have expertise in that, you can contribute data to Wikidata, and then that will be sort of better populated. But it's also it covers pop culture very, very well, because that's something that more folks have knowledge about. But let's just take a little sort of quick tour of what's in here. I'm gonna have a quick look at someone we'll be talking about later. Alexander Macmillan. So I'm going to be looking at, Macmillan. I'm interested in the Scottish co-founder of Macmillan Publishers. You can see there are a number of Alexander Macmillans in here. These are all records of real people who have existed. And one of the things that Wikidata lets us do is sort of disambiguate, to say, lots of people have had the same name in history. Which Alexander Macmillan do we mean? And Wikidata offers us an identifying number for every entity, every person, place, thing, concept that's in there. And then a relationship statement to another entity. So it's right here, I've got a page that's saying Alexander Macmillan, who is now represented by this number, is an instance of human. And I'm looking at the English language interface here, but under the hood, everything in Wikidata is represented by Q numbers for entities and concepts. And if I hover over here, I can see Q5 is the number for representing a human, or P numbers. These are the relationships between entities. So there's a relationship instance of between Alexander Macmillan and the concept of being human. This is really sort of making a statement to claim that Alexander Macmillan is a human being, and that his property number here is P31. And what's useful about this always reminds me of I don't know if folks remember those TD Canada Trust television ads from the late 1990s, where they were at TD Canada Trust, you're more than just a number. We know you as a person. You're not a number. The thing that is sort of gorgeous about Wikidata under the hood is that it actually is reducing or turning everything into a number. And this lets us put different language skins on top of it, so that if somebody's name is different in a different language, or should be written in Cyrillic if we choose the Russian language version of this, and we can see his name spelled differently too in Celtic. Here, we can just work with these numbers and then say, oh, and when someone has selected to look at these numbers, but in another language, we can put that other language skin on top, and we can pull down data in a particular language too. So this is useful if you're using OpenRefine and you want to pull down data that is in English, but it's also useful if you'd like to work with OpenRefine and pull down information that's in other languages. So we have Alexander Macmillan. He's an instance of a human. His relationship of, this is an image of him to this image. Sex or gender, male. Country of citizenship, Scotland. Given name, date of birth. Which calendar are we in? As with all Wikipedia projects, it's possible to put in references. You can see where this information comes from. Snack is an amazing linked data resource as well. Check it out. So that's another workshop, just sort of like waiting to happen. Who is he related to? Name of his children. And then it concludes with a number of identifiers too. We'll be talking about these in a little bit. So the one I want to have people like keep an eye on, or there are two, I guess, is the Library of Congress Authority ID. This is the number that represents this particular Alexander Macmillan of all the like tens of thousands of ones that have existed on Earth in the Library of Congress records. And then I also want to point out the VIAF ID. See, these are not in alphabetical order. VIAF ID. So this is the number that represents him in the Virtual International Authority file. This is a project that aggregates data from libraries from across the world. We'll be looking at it in a moment too. So that's what we get in Wikidata. There's all this data here, and it is populating and helping out sort of the world of like Wikipedia, but we can draw this data in ourselves as well. In this case, working with our original data set, I had wanted to pull in some information about the time of day. So here I decide like 8 p.m. isn't really what I want. I've got you can imagine I've got a bunch of different times in here, and the software that I want to use to visualize this wants the international time. It doesn't accept AM or PM. Rather than having to do like a search and replace to just change all of these, I could use Wikidata's reconciliation service to decide whether or not these were to change all of these to evening or to the international 24-hour clock, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to do today. The other thing you'll need today is this link here. And actually, I think this is also something that I'll say, like, Jada, did you pop this in the chat? This is something we'll need. There are a number of APIs that are ready to be used in this way by OpenRefine. And so but you do have to sort of add them and import them in some way to sort of say, this is one of the places I would like to search for data. So here's the link that we'll need to add this one. And we'll head back into here. What I'm going to do is say time, click on that little button, and then reconcile and start reconciling. Now my hope is that your screen will look a little bit different than mine. These are all the services that I've already installed and regularly use with my own copy. My hope is that you're seeing nothing, but that if you click on Add Standard Service and paste in that URL, paste in the URL from the slides, this guy. And add service, that you will end up with this Wikidata. In fact, actually, since I want to give folks time to do this, I'm going to remove this from my own and add it myself.
Connie, while that's working, I have two questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Will OpenRefine also reconcile GIS locations if you have city or country locations in your spreadsheet?
Yes, if you're using an API that does that. So this one that we're adding, you can use it to add location data and, oh no, I hope this won't be one of those things where like I just deleted something from my own system and then now won't be able to do something live. So yes, we can use Wikidata to bring in lat long data. They also have extensions for geonames, which is another service that we could use to bring in latitude and longitude data. So you'll never have, well, not never, but you won't always have to type in latitude and longitude data over and over and over and over again.
And our next question is, how long does reconciliation take? I'm reconciling only 700 some odd names, and it's been taking over 10 minutes.
Yes, it can take a very long time. Some APIs have sort of like throttles on the number of times you can request data from them in a minute, so that no one person can like monopolize the system. So some of these things, you know, you might have to like go and make yourself a cup of coffee. Sometimes you have to like, you know, head out overnight. With the second spreadsheet, you'll see I only have like 5 names, so that we'll hopefully be able to do the reconciliation like quickly enough. But yeah, with something like 700 or 21,000 lines, it can take a long time. But we'll say do carpal tunnel syndrome. Well, I hope I haven't done myself in if now it won't. Let me add standard service. Well, let me add the service. Now I know I have a heart again because it is breaking. Oh, I can't believe I will have like pooched this when it was working, when I had it installed. I just like willy-nilly deleted it. Has this worked for other folks? My folks can say in the chat.
I don't see anything. But, oh, yeah, getting the same error.
Dun, dun, dun. I might say now is the moment for the halfway 5-minute 9th inning stretch. Go reheat your coffee, and I will stop screen sharing and troubleshoot.
There's a link. Oh, it might be my fault. I'm just comparing the link. Somebody just posted the link, and it looks like I have an I missing at the end from my copy and paste from your emails. So I'm just going to copy this back into the chat. wikidata.reconci.link/en/API.
Let's see.
Maybe Connie, that might work for you.
Indeed. If I can find the chat now that we are in a.
I know, I wish I could just type it in for you.
I know. You know what it's like when you're in the webinar ones, they're not quite the same. I've got questions.
For the lack of
I can also see participants and panelists.
It's in the chat window.
Maybe I don't get chat. But I do get Q&A. Oh wait, more chat. Ah, fantastic. It worked. Haha. Yes. All right. Oof. Boy. I'm sure you could hear the flop sweat in my voice. There we go. API. Yep. I always feel like live demos are like, you know, I don't know if folks have dogs, but like, you know, you have a small dog who like, he loves to do this trick. He does it all the time, you know, and then when there's company like me. Great. So we've added this service. So now when I head into time, I'm going to start reconciling. I'm going to use the Wikidata one. What I want to switch this column to is time of day. And I could go into Wikidata and have a look at time of day and see what that means I would be getting. What does it look like? What is it like related to? I could also find some events that have time of day on them, sort of see what I would get as a result. For the sake of this workshop, I'll just say like, let's just do it. So we'll grab time of day. It's going to give me it's going to auto match when it has like sort of high confidence. I could turn it off and say, I want you to give me what you think is a likely match, but don't automatically change something, like let me go through by hand. We'll start reconciling. And we'll see that it hasn't auto matched on them, but it has said, oh yeah, okay, did you want 2000, or did you want evening, or do you want something else? And so now I have the option of saying, oh yeah, from the software, the particular software that I'm using for visualization, the 2000 is the thing that I'm looking for. I can say, oh yeah, match all identical cells. So anywhere that you found 8 p.m., go to it. And it will reconcile those for me. And these ones, I can say, oh yeah, none works for me here. I'll match all identical skills. And now I might have to go through, with this one, I think everything is 8 p.m., but in the the full version, 2100 completed rows of this one, they perform at different times. So I'd have to go through and find those different times. But now I have something that my software will be interested in. And I can see here the ones that are matched, the ones that had none in them, the ones that were blank. And if I wanted to just look at the ones that are none, I can click on this on the left and it'll show me. It goes, oh, I do have other ones. Hey, look at this. They did perform at other times. Great. Well, I want 7:30. Yeah. Lovely. I want 2 p.m. Hooray. I want 8 a.m. Great. So now I'm nicely set. Lovely. So it's matched on all of these and switched these out for me. So that's some of the ways that things can be useful. The other thing that I wanted to show though was that you could, if you think that Wikidata is clean enough in your domain, so it's worth reading through and sort of seeing, do some spot checks. If it's clean enough in your domain and the thing that you want to do, you could use Wikidata to populate an entire spreadsheet so that you're not having to type in birth and death dates by hand. And it's not just for these kind of small changes. So we're going to switch gears slightly and head back. This will automatically save. I'm going to head back. I'm going to click on that little jewel in the upper left-hand corner.
As we switch gears, might I ask 2 more questions?
Please do.
What are some of other examples of authority files you can point to? VIAF, Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, anything else?
Yes, indeed. Well, actually, this is where Wikidata comes in handy. You can see their identifiers. These are all authority files of one sort or another. Now, not all authority files have APIs, and not all authority files have APIs that work with what are they called? Wikidata. But there are lots out there. ISNI is the authority file for data about people. You may have an ORCID ID. That's another authority file for records about living people sort of in the academic world. Library of Congress authority files are great. British Museum, the Library and Archives Canada has authority files too, as does the New Zealand Library. Actually, the New Zealand government, it's either New Zealand government data or New Zealand National Library has an API that I know works well with OpenRefine in this kind of user-friendly way too. So there are lots of authority files. Wikidata is actually a good place to go to find out what those authority files are. And there are some that may seem sort of spurious and fluffy, and others like Library of Congress and ISNI and VIAF that are a little more serious.
What does none of constraint mean?
Oh, this is the concept of none. I might sort of say oh, I just wanted to leave the word none in there, and then I wouldn't have checked that box to reconcile it. But none of constraint is you're saying sort of the entities that are in Wikidata are people, places, things, or concepts. None of constraint is how they say the idea of none. None of constraint, none of constraint. Oh, it was there. Ugh. So this means like none. Anyway, yeah.
And last one, sorry, a new one came in. I found one time entry for 8 a.m. I assume this is a mistake. How would you find this without manually looking at all the entries?
Oh, I mean, that, do you know what? That too, oh, like when I write a Python script, that I would do this kind of reconciliation exercise. We didn't look at dates, or sorry, we didn't look at the times to do the cluster and merge exercise. The cluster and merge exercise might have caught that 1 a.m. to say like, look, you have one here that's like slightly different than the others. Did you want to merge those? So that might be one way to find the 8 a.m. one, especially if you have like tons and tons and tons of that would be useful. But yes, that's all like, and then is it right or not? And so sometimes you would have to go back to the original sources to say like, did they really play at 8 a.m.? That doesn't sound right. But I recommend that first exercise, that sort of merge and cluster, to find those sort of things. That said, I mean, if it's an error, there's some errors that like it would, I'm trying to think of one that it wouldn't catch. Like it would probably catch 8:01. Might be some that it wouldn't catch. For us. So we'd have. All right, well then let us make a project from scratch. So if you'll head back up in the slides, or is it in the, maybe you can just put the link back in again. We're gonna work with, no, we've done that. Here, so here we're gonna work with that second spreadsheet. These are people from the Dinah Craik Letters Project, which is run by Karen Bourrier from English at the University of Calgary. This is just a list of a few people that are in her letters project. She has a large correspondence project about the people who wrote to 19th century novelist Dinah Craik. So really when you open that spreadsheet, you'll just see a list of names. We're going to populate a larger spreadsheet from that list now. All right. So again, we're going to start by browsing for a file on our computer. And open it up. And here it's giving me my little preview. I see that in this file there aren't headers, so I'm going to ask it to not parse one lines as headers. And here I've got my list. My first 6 people. I've kept this very small because reconciliation can take a long time. It's, you know, calling out to the web and bringing things back, and I'm on the Wi-Fi and who knows how it's being throttled to keep everyone from like overwhelming Wikidata at once. So do this. I'll give this a project. So this can be Toolbox 2020. Great. And I will create project. Great. So here I have my list of people. And say I would like to add information about them from Wikidata. First, I have to find out if they're in Wikidata and if Wikidata can match them. Of course, not all people are in Wikidata. You know, like famously, is it Donna Friedland? That she couldn't like get a. There's Sutherland. I'm just her name. That she couldn't get an article in Wikipedia. I think she actually was already in Wikidata. You know, until she won the Nobel Prize. You know, so that some of these people might be in there. Some of them may not be famous enough. We will hope that Charles Moody of the Moody Circulating Library and the Macmillan brothers who started the Macmillan Publishing Company will be famous enough to be in there. So I'm going to head into Reconcile, and I'm going to use, actually, John, I'm going to check my notes, say, which one did I want to do first? Is this? It is add column from reconciled values. So actually, we're going to head into add column from reconciled values. So we're heading into the arrow and then edit column and then add columns from reconciled values. Oh, we got to do a little reconciling first. All right, let's reconcile. Start reconciling. We're going to use Wikidata. I want to look in humans to see if there are any humans that match these stringed names, and start reconciling. So that was the column arrow, reconcile to Q5 is instance of human. And here it's giving me back. I said that it would like automatically match on things that it was pretty certain about. Dinah Craig is like the only one with this name. So she's come back just fine. Alexander McMillan, there are a lot of Alexander McMillans in Wikidata, as we saw before when we were searching. So I can hover over each of these and be like, do I mean the Earl of Stockton? No. Do I want this one? Yes, this is my Alexander McMillan, Q4195118. Unlike TD in Wikidata, you are always a number, which is like great, and not these other ones. So I can say, I want to match this cell. This also lets me sort of like click out. So if I wanted to, I can click here and have a look and like read in Wikidata to make sure this is really the person I want. Match this cell. Danny McMillan, that's his brother. George Lilly Craig is indeed Dinah Craig's husband's name. That's someone else. Charles Moody, they got him. Dinah Crosland, English writer, got him. Great. So now I have these people, they've reconciled this to Wikidata. Now when I head into edit column, add column from reconciled values, it can check for data that's in data that is coming from here, that is related to him. Of all of the Alexander McMillans, this is what it's going to be looking for when I say, please add the country of citizenship. Please add his date of birth. Please add his places of birth to my spreadsheet. It's going to be looking for this Alexander McMillan now that we've done that reconciliation. All right, so
with a quick technical question.
Yeah.
Somebody's ended up with a column titled Dinah Craig and only 5 rows. How can it be fixed to prevent it in the future?
With that one, if you are in the like opening stage where it shows you the preview of your file, there are a bunch of like options below, and it says treat the first row as a header or not. And if you uncheck that, it will not treat it as a header. I think I might have a slide of that, which would be helpful if I do. I do not, but when we start another project, like a last one, I will like pause at that moment and kind of point it out again. Yeah, so not to worry for this time. You will have 5 of her correspondence, but not her. But yeah, there is a way to if you don't have headers, to tell OpenRefine there are no headers here. Please treat every row as though it's unit data. Great, good question. All right, well, then I'm going to start adding some columns. I trust Wikidata had a look and sort of see, if it is sort of correct. It's not giving some odd birth dates and death dates and that kind of thing. And so I'm going to add columns from reconciled values. So that's the little arrow, edit column, this is in the slides, add columns from reconciled values. And I would like to say I'd like to do a network, a map of the places that all of her correspondents were born. So, is this going to be like a very sort of like international correspondence network? So I'm going to add place of birth by clicking on place of birth. And they'll give me a little preview. So it has data for almost everybody, but nothing for George Lee Craig. It's okay. And I'll hit OK. And it will add that information for me. I'd say I'd also like to add their, what's that London doing there? This makes me suspicious. If I were doing this like not in a live demo, I would like then go and like check back through these and say like, where's that London coming from? For the sake of time, I will leave it as is. And here we'll head into edit column and add column from reconciled values. I'd like to get their date of birth. And I know that date of birth exists because it's in here. So I can have a look. I can always be toggling back and forth. So I have a look, date of birth, property P569. Luckily, this lets me type in English. So do date of birth. And I can do things like include these people's novels. I was clicking on their names. I could really like add sort of lots of content from there. That weird London is in there. I'm not sure what that's about, but I could then use this data to work out like the average, you know, the age of her correspondence when she was corresponding with them, that sort of thing. So here we have everyone's birth date. And again, too, depending on what I need the spreadsheet for, I could then start splitting this out if I wanted to just have the year or just have the month or transpose the month in some way so that it was like written out long form, if that's what I wanted in pop-ups for the timeline that I was using the spreadsheet to make, that kind of thing. So this is like, this can be really quite handy as a good way to bring data in. The last thing I'm going to do is to bring data in from an API written out in full like URL form, like that doesn't have this friendly user interface. So before I like, oh, do you know what? No, we have time. There's one other thing that I would like to show. One other thing I'm going to bring in is we had looked at all of those, all of these ID numbers for people, and say I needed these ID links for my own project sort of to be included. And here I've got things like the VIAF ID or the Library of Congress Authority number. And say I know that like Library of Congress Authority numbers are always part of a URL at the Library of Congress that is like, you know, loc.gov/authority/NO this thing. And I wanted to be able to let people like click on something in my map that would take them to the Library of Congress record for Alexander Macmillan. I can use Wikidata, or sorry, OpenRefine to get this number, but it's not sort of like automatically a link for me. So what I'd like to do is sort of say like, okay, here's VIAF. This is the Virtual International Authority file, just put together by OCLC in the States, and it's data that comes in from all of these libraries. Say I wanted in my spreadsheet to have a clickable link that that would take me to Alexander Macmillan, or maybe Dinah Craig's. Let's do Dinah. All right. I wanted people to be able to get to this page. Here we have Dinah Craig as her name is written out in all of these different national libraries. From here to, I can find out more about, I choose her, find out about their holdings. I could find out about her works, the things that she had written. So say I want to be able to sort of have this, this link in here. I want to use Wikidata to pull in her VIAF ID, but to append in front of it the rest of the URL that I would need to then have this sort of clickable link in my text. So let's do that as well. I'm going to do column, edit column, add column from reconciled values, and I'm going to get the VIAF number. Then we'll change that column slightly. I want the VIAF ID, please. And each of these people exists in VIAF, which means that like in some national library, they have a record. VIAF ID. So right now, this is just the number. I want to be able to have something that like my visualization software, my Fusion table or map or something that will have like a link that would take me to here. So what I'm going to do is add some information to each of these rows. And so here I can edit cells and transform. The transform takes me to a window where where the word value represents what's in there now, and I can add text before and after. A whole other workshop, which would also be a good deal of fun, would be around the general refined expression language, GREL, which is a programming language or data manipulation language. I don't know. Anyway, it's not a pure programming language, but there's a language, again, the links at the end of the slides will teach you a little bit of GREL as well. We can do much more sophisticated things and manipulate the content of these rows. In this case, I'm just going to show how to add a string in front, which is a series of characters in front or behind the particular value in a cell. In this case, I've got in each cell the VIAF ID number for each person, and I know that every URL from VIAF starts with https://www.viaf.org/VIAF. So I want that in each of my cells as well. So I'm going to copy that part, and then our strings or running list of characters altogether always go inside comparable quotes, double quotations, or single quotations. I'll put those in here. So I've got the double quotations there and a plus to add this value. And it's giving me a pop-up of like, oh no, I'm bringing you something from another class. Should be, oh, for crying in the sink. Single quotes. No, nothing, just this value. I don't like that I'm getting a null result here for these. I want flop sweat again, folks. What I'm looking for is for it to add.
Getting chat help.
Oh, chat help. Yeah, I'll take it.
Quotation marks around
quotation marks.
URL and then plus value after it.
Okay, there we go. And so you can see here, it's giving me a little preview of what it's going to do in there. It'll add this content. And maybe I want a slash at the end. My little plus. Yep. So hopefully folks are seeing that in the chat, but it is, as I had said so why it worked, that didn't work the first time, I don't know. Double quotation marks, and I've got the thing that I want repeatedly added to each one. Value represents the number that's in there already. And then anything else plus, my plus is to say, concatenate this, add this extra bit, whatever's in quotation marks here. And all right, and then I have some options down here to sort of say, if I get an error message back, like say someone didn't have a VIAF number, do I want to keep whatever's in there or do I want to make it blank? Do I want to store the error message? I'm going to say keep original. And so now I have these nice VIAF links in here, and I didn't have to cut and paste anything in or again, get any sort of carpal tunnel syndrome. And now when I open any one of those, I can get my information about Camilla Dufour Crossland in VIAF. So hopefully that would be useful to folks too. GREL could be its own workshop, which would be like a good deal of fun. There's lots you can kind of do in there, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a taste of how you could change some of the data in here. So again, that was the little arrow, and then edit column, and oh no, it was right, edit cells, and then transform, and that'll let you mess it out in there.
I've just joked in the chat that you can just deliver the whole winter term. Could just be like coffee money bi-weekly.
So I am speaking to you from, well, I'm lucky enough to have a guest bedroom. I'm speaking to you from my guest bedroom, and I'm lonely. I would love to do the whole winter term. It would be a lot of fun to like all get together this way. So,
do we have time for a question?
Definitely.
Can you talk about the differences in the cluster and merge and the reconcile tasks and what scenario each would call for?
Yes, definitely. The cluster and merge is reading your spreadsheet and looking for near matches and saying, did you mean for these to be the same? Reconcile is like heading out onto the internet to get some content, to look at an existing authority file. So to look at VIAP, to look at Wikidata and say, is the thing in your spreadsheet the same as this thing out on the internet? And then asks you, are these two things the same? Would you like to bring in data from this other one? So the cluster and edit is just reading the spreadsheet and saying like, maybe some stuff needs to be like, I don't know, collapsed together here. And then the reconcile is like heading out to the internet and reading an authority file of some sort, geonames, Wikidata, via something like that, and comparing it to the stuff in your spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Well, there's only one last thing left. And this was really just, I tacked this on because like, I don't know, you young made it like seems so like tantalizing. It was like, we could do a whole API sort of thing. You can, not every service API, or not every authority file and API kind of service has this kind of user-friendly reconciliation version. But we can also work with existing APIs anyway and pull data in from them. So I guess like, I don't have time to do like a big, like, here's what APIs are, but I guess I had that like small kind of overview. These are data services that let us as users make computationally based like sort of queries to large groups of data, and will send us back structured data from those existing databases and existing data sources. For this version, we're going to be heading into the Library of Congress and trying to create a spreadsheet that has images from the Library of Congress. I included in the slides the link that this is based on. So I'm working from the explanation of how to use the Library of Congress API that's here in the slides. One of the things that can be a challenge when you're starting out is that like every API is different. The way that you construct the URL that makes up your query is different for each single one. It gets easier with time, like as with all things that we're like, developing expertise in. Some APIs have really great documentation that say, oh, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to put in. If you get this error message, here's what that means. Here's what an example might look like. Here's what another example might look like. Other APIs, as we all do with our own like research projects, or have, I'm sure, they're like, oh, we'll do some really nice like documentation if we have like time at the end. And then is there time at the end and there isn't, you end up making sort of like thin documentation. And you think like, I'll just remember like how this sort of works. Some APIs have very thin documentation. Others have more fulsome documentation. I feel like actually this tutorial, this like explanation of how to use Library of Congress, the Library of Congress API is like somewhere in the middle between those two. So they have some tutorials and they have this list of how to create your request. And so in this, to query the API, we have to give it the base URL, which is to say the URL of the authority that maintains all of this data. So that's www.loc.gov. And then every API has a number of parameters that you can add to say, oh, I'd like to search. And in this case, it's saying, I'd like to search for the word baseball. And FO in this case, followed by JSON, is what format would you like your content returned in? So it can return HTML to me. It can return JSON, which is a structured data format, to me. It can also, some APIs can return XML to you, can have the data kind of come back to you. Mark records can have the data come back to you in different formats. In this case, with Library of Congress, we're going to use the FO JSON at the end of every one of our queries. And then it does give you a rundown of how to construct these queries. So you can get back maps and photos, manuscripts. You can sort of say information about them. Sometimes they have that stuff available for you just to download, like the actual map. Sometimes it might be just a record about the map. So they give you a rundown of like what some of the parameters are. When we have the like so much fun in the winter doing Grell and doing APIs, we could like go into these in a little more depth. I pre-constructed one for us here. These can be like hard to parse when you like see them for the first time, but here's our base URL. At the very end, we've said the last thing they've told us in the documentation, the last thing you have to do is tell us what format you want this back in. The format that we want back is JSON, and that's how we do it. In my case, I've said I want to go through your pictures in the API documentation. It says like what kind of things you can call back. And here is how I ask for pictures of Canada. And actually, one of the things kind of nice, if I head to like the Library of Congress here myself, and I look for Canada, and I look for images, I can actually see that they actually use their own. Oh no, this is a bad sign. This means our query won't work. The Library of Congress is down. That's bad. Maybe it's just their images are dead. But that they are actually using their own API to bring us back results. So this is actually making an API call on their own data in order to give us back results. I can see some of those things like and Q Canada, that's my search word. If I change this to and Q suffrage, well, if it was working, I would get back. Oh no, oh, I know it's working. I would get back suffrage. So you can learn a little bit about APIs if the service that you're querying also like has a front end to its API and they use it in this way by like, I don't know, kind of like noodling around in here. Let's see if this will work for us. We will find out. Okay, so right. So I've got my base, my format that I want to get things back in. This is what the query looks like. The tutorial linked here told me how to write this. I want back pictures. I know the Library of Congress is not going to give me back like full high-res things. Wikidata does give me back full-res things, but Library of Congress is just going to give me back thumbnails. But if I wanted to use this to, again, populate a map with pop-ups or something like this, this would be a way to get the URLs for each of those images and pull them down without having to click and click and click and click and click. So from the slides, you can just highlight this. And we're going to head and copy it. We're going to, again, click on that little gem in the upper left-hand corner to start a new project. And instead of pulling in a file from this computer, I'm going to click on the web addresses URLs. And this is going to go out to the web. And I hope, although that error message I just got from Library of Congress makes me nervous, get me back images that match the query for Canada and then bring them back to me as JSON. I'll click on next with my fingers crossed. It worked, hooray. Oh, and so also when you're bringing in tabular data, it's this screen. Oh, I'm pointing my own thing, that's not helpful. It's this screen where like at the bottom, we've got all these options. Under CSV, parse next one line as column headers, that's the spot where I would turn on and off like whether or not there are headers. That's to get that like making sure that Dyna isn't the being treated as a column header. So anyway, so it recognizes we've got some JSON files here, and this JSON is like lovely. I've got the URLs for every thumbnail of anything that's returned in the hit for looking for Canada. What I want to do is, let's see the option here. Oh, you're killing me. What I want is to turn this into a spreadsheet for myself. They're sort of like much easier to read JSON files. Right. So to go from like, this is what the JSON format looks like, but I want this in a spreadsheet form. I'm gonna get you to click on, there's some arrows in here that'll show, click on in the slides that'll show parse text into numbers and dates. And this will make it easier for me to work with. I'll give this thing a name. This will be DH Toolbox. Oh, it's 5 minutes to go. Funny. Let's see. Create project. And here I get a nice set of data with all the information that comes back from a Library and Archives Canada search, sorry, Library of Congress search for Canada. It's these thumbnails that I'm getting back along with the other data that ends up in these ends. Often APIs are used in the way we're seeing on the screen now, where under the hood, the links are all coming in and that they're filling a template that says, okay, make the name appear this large, make the image appear from the link on the left-hand side, that kind of thing. When we're pulling the data in, it can seem like, I don't know, less useful to us, but maybe it is useful if we needed to get those image URLs. But these are some of the things that we can do when we're just using an API to pull data in. So this would be part of a more advanced project. You want to get to know the API and the data source and sort of like think through kind of what you need. Whereas like Wikidata is like more fun for just noodling around. And then the last thing I want to show was if I want to go back, I just clicked on that little gem in the upper left-hand corner and open any of my existing projects. I see that they're here. So I can close this out and come back again later and keep working on any of these, because there's always lots of cleaning to do and lots of things to add down the line. Oh, the thing I didn't show you. With 1 minute left, 2 minutes left, how to export. Let's head back into.
Great, because we just got a question. If I want to send a cleaned up spreadsheet to someone else, do I use OpenRefine share function or find the spreadsheet file on my computer?
You can use the OpenRefine share function. I never have myself. If you wanted to like collaborate on it, and it would send what you would do, what I gather you would be sending then is you're sending a file that would then have all of these too, like the undo, like if someone wanted to like see what your process was. But also, yes, I'm glad I put in the slide to remind myself to do this. It does, OpenRefine, of course, lets you export your data either as an OpenRefine project archive file, so that would keep all of my edits, undos, and I can see my like steps. But if you, yes, in the upper right-hand corner, if you click on export, I could decide what kind of file I want as my output. So if I decide on an Excel file, it will create and download an Excel file for me. Because yes, it's not really all that useful if it just sits in the browser forever and ever. And we can open it. You can open it up and share that with you, so you can have a look and see that it really exists. There we go. Oh, my date of birth did not come out. Oh, well, there we are. I have done this and had the date of birth come out, so that would be another thing I would like troubleshoot. But here I've got my nice little like BIAF links and those sort of things. All sort of spitting out. I think I would try putting this out as a CSV instead of an Excel. See if there's any like code that's kind of hitching a ride that Excel, which is there's lots going on under the hood, is misinterpreting here. So I might try again with CSV as my output. All right, and folks, that is. I'm trying to share my. You see my slides? I'm trying to share my slides. Yes, you are. Great. There are a few more resources listed here if you'd like to like take this a little bit further. I highly recommend the Programming Historian in both French and English for working with OpenRefine. There's lots that you can do in there. And we do have a moment or two for final questions if folks have them.
I don't see any new questions, but while we wrap up, first, thank you so much. I always learn something new every time you deliver an open refine session. Just such a great tool. I'm going to hold you to delivering the entire winter term because I think you've given us already a bunch of new ideas and everybody's eager. So coffee with Connie and I'll be your Vanna, so it'll be okay.
Excellent.
But before everyone goes, or as you're leaving, I just want to remind you that in next week we're off. It's reading week here, but we'll be back the week after, November 4th, with Sean Graham from Carleton. He's going to come and teach us a little bit about how to scrape Instagram. So that's November 4th, 11:30. If you haven't registered, please do as soon as you can, and we'll links to resources. I will put them in the chat one more time. And maybe they're also in the slides, I think. So even if you just grab these slides, which is the first link there, you should have all those links, and you'll just need to add the I to the collection service one. And don't hesitate to reach out to either of us. If you have questions about the content, send them to Connie. If you have questions about the series, send them to me at dhnarts@uottawa.ca.
All part of the CRC service. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Connie. That was so great. And we'll see everyone again in 2 weeks.
Have a great week. Stay safe. Ciao.